This is the two young ladies right here. Told these young ladies, they're 16 years old, that they were fucking insane, left them in tears, and now we've got a major situation. We also, the video I did earlier, we got a Seattle Storm fan spitting in the face of an Indiana Fever fan. Kathy Engelbert, you've lost complete control of this league. Adam Silver, she's got no control of this league.
A WNBA game in Seattle turned into a national story this week, not because of anything that happened on the court, but because of a confrontation between a team's own co-owner and two teenage fans sitting courtside.
These two women attempted to trip a teenage girl walking past them in an XXXY Athletics athletics t-shirt. This is them right here. And by the way, that's the shirt that these young ladies were wearing. A lot of people in attendance was wearing these shirts because this is a brand that tailors itself towards respecting biological girls and women, competing against biological girls and women in sports, and keeping biological men out of sports.
The tension had been building for days before the opening tip. Indiana Fever guard Sophie Cunningham had recently become one of the most talked about figures in the league, and not primarily for her play. In a wide-ranging profile published by ESPN's Hallie Grossman on July 21st, Cunningham described herself as very much in the middle politically, saying she agrees with things on both sides and disagrees with things on both sides. But on one point, she left little room for interpretation. She does not believe transgender women should compete in women's sports. She said she wants to protect young girls in locker rooms and in competition from having to face what she described as biological men. She pushed back on the idea that this position made her hateful, saying she had received plenty of negative feedback accusing her of hating transgender people, and that she felt she was doing the opposite, that she saw herself as extending love alongside what she called honesty. The comments did not fade quietly. 2 days later, ahead of Indiana's game against the Connecticut Sun, reporters asked Cunningham about the backlash directly, and she doubled down rather than walking anything back. She told reporters she had said what she said, that she considered her position common sense, and that it was rooted in protecting young female athletes under the spirit of Title IX. The Indiana Fever organization issued its own statement around that time, describing its players as thoughtful adults with their own perspectives and voices, and noting that those views belong to the players themselves rather than the team. Cunningham's remarks landed inside a legal and cultural debate that was already active well beyond basketball. Indiana, the state where she plays, has its own ban on transgender athletes in scholastic and collegiate competition, a law the Supreme Court upheld in late June. The NCAA maintains a similar prohibition at the college level. No transgender woman has ever played in the WNBA itself, though former player Lacia Clarendon became the first athlete in the league's history to publicly come out as transgender and non-binary back in 2020. Cunningham's comments drew support from figures like author J.K. Rowling, while critics online accused her of targeting a small and already vulnerable community. Some Storm players staked out the opposite position visibly. Center Stephanie Dolson wore a shirt supporting transgender rights before the Fever game, a pointed contrast to the message. Cunningham's supporters were bringing into the building that same night. By the time Tuesday arrived, both sides had mobilized. A coalition opposing transgender participation in women's sports organized a rally outside Climate Pledge Arena in support of Cunningham, and a counter-demonstration was organized in response, turning the plaza outside the arena into its own separate flashpoint well before tip-off. Reporters covering the scene beforehand described a sense of anticipation that the night could turn contentious, given how quickly Cunningham's comments had spread across both sports media and the wider political conversation about transgender participation in athletics. Inside the building, two 16-year-old girls took seats courtside wearing shirts from XXXY Athletics, a brand built around the idea of preserving separate categories for male and female athletes based on biological sex. One of the two has since been identified as Anali Wilson, a track and cross-country athlete at Eastmont High School in East Wenatchee, Washington, who became a public advocate for sex-based categories in girls' sports after finishing second as an 8th grader in the 4,600-meter race at a regional meet in 2024. Their seats, reportedly costing around $4,300 each, had been paid for by an anonymous donor. The girls carried handmade signs. One read, "We love you, Sophie." The other read, "Thank you, Sophie, for speaking up for girls." According to the girls' own account, given afterward to independent journalist Brandy Cruz, they were not causing any disruption. They said they were cheering for both teams, sitting quietly, and holding their signs without directing anything at anyone. That, they say, is when a woman approached them. The girls and Cruz identified her as Celeste Keaton, a minority co-owner of the Storm and the longtime partner of the team's majority co-owner, Lisa Brummel. The Storm's broader ownership group, known as Force 10 Hoops, also includes Ginny Gilder and Dawn Trudeau. By the girls' telling, Keaton first invoked religion, telling them that Jesus loves everyone and that she hoped Jesus could forgive them for their sins. The exchange escalated from there. The girls say Keaton then called them, in their words, effing insane. One of the two was left in tears. Cruz, who was in the arena and stayed with the girls afterward, said that when she flagged the incident to an arena security guard, the guard identified the woman only as one of the owners of the team. Cruz has also pushed back on a separate claim that circulated afterward, saying it is not true that arena staff told the girls to put their signs away. According to her, the girls chose to lower the signs themselves because after the confrontation they said they felt scared and uncomfortable holding them up any longer. Cruz's role in the story is worth noting on its own. She is an independent Seattle-based journalist who runs her own outlet, and she was present at the arena specifically to cover the rally and the broader reaction to Cunningham's comments. It was her reporting, corroborated afterward by Fox News Digital and picked up by outlets including the Seattle Times, USA Today, ESPN, and Al Jazeera, that first identified Keaton as the woman involved and brought the girls' account to a national audience. Because so much of what is known about the exchange itself comes through Cruz relaying what the girls told her, rather than through footage of the moment, several outlets have been careful to frame the specific details, including the exact language used, as reported or alleged rather than independently confirmed. Cruz also told Fox News that the hostility in the building was not limited to the courtside interaction. She said Seattle players could be seen making thumbs-down gestures toward the girls at points during the game, and that a portion of the crowd booed the two fans repeatedly. Before the game, the Storm organization had acknowledged it was aware of the planned demonstration outside the arena, saying the club was tracking the situation closely and remained committed to providing a safe and inclusive environment for everyone in attendance. After the final buzzer, Storm head coach Sonia Rahman addressed the rally that had taken place outside but did not speak directly to the allegations involving the two fans, saying only that the organization wants people to feel welcome coming into the building and that it had coordinated with arena security throughout the night. On the court, the game itself went to Indiana. The Fever beat the Storm 105-95 in front of a sellout crowd of 18,343, with Caitlin Clark scoring a team-high 32 points in what was Indiana's fourth consecutive win. Neither Clark nor Cunningham was made available to reporters after the game. The team's public response came the next morning. Storm majority owner Ginny Gilder released a statement acknowledging that one of the club's co-owners had made comments to two fans at the previous night's game. She said the organization was aware of what happened and apologized for it, adding that everyone who attends a Storm game deserves to feel welcome, and that the club remained committed to creating an inclusive environment where every fan is treated with respect. The statement did not name Keaton directly and did not go into detail about what was said. For a lot of people following the story, that apology did not settle much. Reaction split almost immediately, along the same lines as the broader debate over transgender participation in women's sports, with one side arguing that a team executive had frightened and insulted two teenagers over a sign, and the other side arguing that Keaton's reaction, however harsh, was a response to fans who had shown up specifically to make a political statement inside the arena. Comment sections and social media threads filled with users on both sides, some calling for Keaton to be removed from the ownership group entirely, others defending her and criticizing the girls and the brand they were wearing. The story did not stop with the apology. By Wednesday, multiple outlets, including the Seattle Times and USA Today, confirmed that the WNBA had stepped in. The league fined Keaton and suspended her from attending the Storm's next 5 home games, a punishment that will keep her out of the arena until September. Fox News Digital reported the same outcome, citing confirmation directly from the league. The discipline drew its own wave of reaction. Some fans argued the punishment was overdue and appropriate given that Keaton holds a position of authority within the organization. Others online argued the opposite, suggesting the league had picked a side in a broader political dispute and that a fan wearing controversial apparel does not forfeit their protection from being cursed at by a team official. Posts calling the suspension unfair sat alongside posts calling it insufficient, and neither side showed much sign of backing down. The online reaction to the suspension itself was sharply divided, and it mirrored the same fault lines that had defined the Cunningham story from the start. Some fans argued the punishment was deserved and framed it as accountability for someone in a position of institutional power. Others posted that the league had, in their view, picked a side, arguing that a fan wearing merchandise from an advocacy brand does not forfeit the right to be treated respectfully by a team official, regardless of what that merchandise represents politically. A number of posts specifically question why a co-owner would be disciplined for a verbal exchange with fans in a way that, in their view, exceeded penalties handed out in other fan interaction cases around the league. Others pushed back just as forcefully, arguing that comparing an executive's conduct toward two minors to ordinary fan disputes understated the severity of what was alleged to have happened. Neither side of that exchange showed much sign of conceding ground in the hours after the news broke. It is also worth understanding who Keaton is within the Storm's ownership structure, since much of the public conversation treated her, inaccurately in some cases, as if she were the team's principal owner. The Storm is controlled by a group called Force 10 Hoops, which includes Ginny Gilder as majority owner alongside Don Trudeau, Lisa Brummel, and Keaton, who holds a minority stake and is Brummel's longtime partner. It was Gilder, not Keaton, who spoke publicly for the organization in the apology issued the morning after the game, a detail that reflects the group's internal structure even as public anger settled almost entirely on Keaton individually. Cunningham herself broke her silence on the matter after the suspension became public. She called Keaton's actions truly embarrassing and said she planned to send the two girls gifts. It was a notably direct response from a player who has spent the past several weeks at the center of one of the more polarizing conversations in the league, and it added another layer to a story that had already stretched well beyond a single confrontation at courtside seats. What makes this incident different from a typical fan dispute is the position of the person accused of losing her temper. Season-long friction between fans and officials, even between players and fans, is not unusual in professional sports. It is far less common for someone with an ownership stake in the team to be the one accused of directing expletives at teenagers in the crowd. That dynamic is part of why the story spread as quickly as it did, and why the punishment handed down by the league became its own separate news cycle. A fine and a 5-game suspension is a real consequence, not a symbolic one, and it puts Keaton on the sidelines. Unable to attend home games for more than a month, the broader context here is Cunningham's own evolving role this season. Averaging just over 9 points a game off the bench, she is not the Fever's leading scorer or its most decorated player, yet she has become one of the more visible, and at times more controversial figures on a roster that already draws outsized national attention because of Caitlin Clark. Cunningham built a national profile well before the transgender sports comments, from a viral finger-pointing moment during an altercation involving Clark and Connecticut's Dewana Bonner, to appearances in Sports Illustrated, a stint as a ring girl at a UFC event, and her own signature sneaker line. She has also pushed back publicly on being labeled part of the MAGA movement, calling that kind of branding a projection rather than an accurate description of her views. Her comments on transgender athletes in women's sports were always going to generate strong reactions in both directions, and the dueling rallies outside Climate Pledge Arena before Tuesday's game were a direct extension of that. What nobody could have predicted was that the flashpoint of the night would not be anything Cunningham said or did on the floor or anything that happened between the rival demonstrations outside, but a confrontation involving two teenagers who came to support her from the stands. The suspension of Keaton also puts a spotlight on how sports leagues generally handle discipline involving executives and ownership figures, an area where decisions tend to draw scrutiny regardless of the outcome. A fine paired with a 5-game home suspension is a tangible penalty, not a symbolic one, and it means Keaton will not be permitted inside Climate Pledge Arena for Storm home games until September. Whether that penalty is viewed as appropriate, excessive, or insufficient largely depends on which side of the underlying debate a given fan already occupies, and the online reaction in the day after the suspension was announced made that divide plain. Some argued a co-owner should be held to a higher standard than an ordinary fan precisely because of the authority and visibility that comes with the position. Others argued the league had effectively taken a side in a political dispute by disciplining someone for a reaction to fans who had, in their view, come to the arena looking to make a statement. There are still details that remain unconfirmed and likely to stay that way. The precise wording of everything said between Keaton and the two girls comes from the girls' own account, relayed through Cruz, and has not been independently verified by audio or video from inside the arena. The Storm organization has not disputed that the exchange took place, and Gilder's apology effectively confirmed that some kind of confrontation occurred, but the team has not confirmed the specific language attributed to Keaton. That distinction matters. What is established is that a confrontation happened, that it left at least one of the two fans in tears, that the team apologized the next day without naming names, and that the league subsequently fined and suspended Keaton for 5 home games. What remains attributed specifically to the girls' account, rather than confirmed independently, are the exact words used during the exchange. There is also the matter of what the Storm organization itself knew going in. The team has said it was aware of the planned demonstration before the game and was monitoring it closely, language that suggests the club anticipated some level of friction around Cunningham's supporters attending in person. What the organization apparently did not anticipate, or at least did not prevent, was one of its own co-owners becoming the center of the story rather than the fans or the protest outside. Head coach Sonia Rahman's post-game comments stopped short of addressing the specific allegations against Keaton, focusing instead on the team's general commitment to making the arena welcoming and its coordination with security, which left the most detailed account of what actually happened courtside, resting almost entirely on the girls' own retelling to Cruz. Whatever conclusions individual fans draw from the underlying political debate, the sequence of events at Climate Pledge Arena is now well documented across multiple independent outlets. A rally and counter-rally outside the building, a confrontation courtside involving a team co-owner and 2 teenage fans, a next-day apology from the team's majority owner, and a league-imposed fine and suspension by midweek. That is a fast-moving chain of events, even by the standards of a league that has spent much of this season generating national headlines. For now, the practical outcome is clear. Keaton will not be at Climate Pledge Arena for the Storm's next 5 home games, meaning she is barred from attending in an official capacity until September. The Fever, winners of 4 straight games after the victory in Seattle, move on to their next matchup with Caitlin Clark coming off a 32-point performance and the team riding its longest win streak of the season. Cunningham has said she intends to follow up with the 2 fans directly and send them gifts, a gesture that keeps her personally tied to the story even as the league's disciplinary process plays out separately. Meanwhile, the debate over her original comments on transgender athletes in women's sports, the one that started this entire chain of events well before either team stepped onto the court in Seattle, shows no sign of quieting down, regardless of how the league ultimately chose to handle the aftermath of 1 game and 1 confrontation courtside in Seattle. What began as a pre-game rally over a handful of shirts and handmade signs ended up producing a suspension, a fine, a public apology, and a fresh round of national debate over where the line sits between a fan's right to express a political view inside an arena and a team official's obligation to treat every person in the building with basic respect, teenager or not.